Let me tell you a little story about the West Coast synthesis. The West Pest from Cre8audio is a so-called West Coast synthesizer. It is a homage to West Coast synthesis. And West Coast synthesis was invented by Don Buchla in the 1960s, who majored in physics in 1960. Soon after, he started making electronic instruments. Why electronic? In an interview in the magazine Polyphony in August 1983, Don Buchla says, "The advent of the microcomputer has really made it possible to make the electronic medium a very viable performance medium. Before the microcomputer, we were very limited as performers." And further, therein lies the exciting possibilities of electronic instruments, the instantaneous remapping of the relationship between input gesture and output response. So this gives you some sort of background of how he was thinking when creating his instruments. Don Buchla was opposed to tradition. He says in the same interview, "I have always been outside and I've chosen to remain there. I have been an experimentalist since my early childhood. I grew up surprisingly ignorant of what was going on in other people's music. There are hundreds of thousands of people interested in alternative modes of expression." And finally, music as we know it is rooted in a great deal of tradition and is resistant to change on many levels. So, given these quotes, you understand that West Coast synthesis is supposed to be something completely different. If you are familiar with the typical Moog synthesizer or an ordinary synthesizer, you will hear the words oscillator, filter, VCA, sequencer. But in the Buchla world, those concepts are replaced by complex waveform generator, a multiple arbitrary function generator, complex oscillator, source of uncertainty, quad dynamics manager, etc. In the same interview in Polyphony in 1983, he says, "I wouldn't call anything that I've built a synthesizer." So this is the West Pest. What does it has to offer? Well, it has an oscillator, sine wave, triangle and saw. These waves can be played individually or in any combination, even all together, which results in some sort of noise sound. It has frequency modulation, and unique to West Coast synthesis as opposed to East Coast is the wave folder. The wave folder is simply something that, let's say this is the top of a sine wave and the wave is folded like this, resulting in more harmonic content. This folder lets you fold any wave up to 6 times. Those waves available are these. The square wave is not available because it is not easy to fold a square wave. Fold modulator, resonance controlled, and this section, this yellow one, called dynamics controller, is some sort of envelope. Well, it's a VCA plus a filter called a low pass gate, which was Don Buchla's invention. And the idea behind a low pass gate is to add harmonic content to higher volume sounds and reduce the harmonic content to lower volume sounds. So when the release is active, the note is decaying, is released, the harmonic content will be reduced. And that mimics something that is moving away from you in the physical world. And that is, I guess, pleasing to the human ear, accustomed as we are to the physical world. Now, this Dynamics controller is, together with a wave folder, specific to West Coast synthesis. There's an LFO, and this LFO has two modes, high and low. The low mode goes from 41 seconds up to about 5 Hertz, and the high mode goes from 2 Hertz to 500. So the high mode goes into audio rate. Anything about 20 Hertz is audio. And this is glide, which lets one note glide into the next one, and you have volume. In addition to that, you have this keyboard, 13 keys, and this is 1 octave, C1 to C2. The keyboard also has another function. It lets you choose different kind of menu items, so to speak. The yellow line is activated using this button, the yellow modifier, and the white line or activated by using the white modifier. Now you see the yellow line and the white line. There are quite a few menu items to choose from, and I will go into some of them. In addition to this West Pest has a 5 octave range controlled by these two. And you can save presets and load them, and that's quite handy, to any of these buttons. 13 slots then. And you of course have this patch bay. The two first columns are inputs and the two right columns are outputs. And you can also see that there's MIDI implemented, and that's not common in Buchla systems, as far as I know. And that makes this very versatile. You can use an external keyboard and have a lot of fun. In addition, as you can see, this is Eurorack format, so you can unscrew these screws and put it into your rack. And then you have a wave folder using the fold in, this one. So suddenly you have a wave folder, and you have an oscillator, and you have frequency modulation, you have an LFO, and you have this low pass gate, and a sequencer and a keyboard. And that's a lot of modules for $249 or euro. Yeah, that's actually the price, $249. Usually, West Coast synthesis, a Buchla system, is very expensive. You have to pay, say, $2,000, $5,000 in order to get the system. So this one is the cheapest way in. In order to demonstrate how West Pest is working, I would like to make a track or part of a track that suits my particular taste. Now, it is West Coast synthesis. You have the wave folder, you have the special low pass gate, and you have randomness. Randomness is accessible using the menus on the white keys. The white modifier and the yellow modifier activates certain functions, and some of those are randomness. You can play, for example, the sequence in a random fashion, but you have no control over that particular randomness. Now, in order to make a track that I like, let's start the sequencer by activating it. And first let's listen. Okay, that's the note that's the octave. Higher. Okay, I like this one. So I activate the sequence. This is slit. And then I add a note. That's cool. It sounds like several notes, and that's because of the folding. without the folding, let's start again. One note. If you add folding, more harmonic content, more complex. So let's start using this octave. Activating the sequence, adding a note. Adding one more. Adjusting swing. Modifying fold. Go one octave up. Yes, increasing resonance. I go down on sustain and maximum release. Then modify release modulation. Now I would like to add some randomness. So I can play the sequence in a random fashion using the white modifier and pressing B. I do not have any control over the randomness, but it is random. I would have liked some control over this kind of randomness actually. Now let's see what we can do with the LFO. Yes. Adjusting fold. The fold modulation. Yes. Now I would like to readjust or choose some other combination of the waveforms. That's the noise part, all three waveforms at once. Just sine, just triangle, just saw, sine and triangle, sine and saw, and triangle and saw. I like that one. How about frequency modulation? No, I don't like that. But I would like it to use this sequence and include more octaves. And the way you do that is holding down the yellow modifier and pressing A. Now it uses one octave spread. If you press it again, that's 2 octaves. This way you can use a sequence that you have saved, load it into the West Pest, and then modify that sequence using, for example, this octave function. And then perhaps reload another sequence, and then reload another sequence that fit that particular one. You can re-trigger the envelope, white modifier, and you can also adjust the gates, white modifier, and this one. That changes the rhythm. Let's use That. How about adjusting the clock? A little bit too fast. That was cool. I like that. Oh. Just like mud. Walking in mud at night. With closed eyes. Thinking of exorcism. Now let's add one rest. I will increase the tempo. I will adjust the swing. Completely different melody. I'm adjusting the swing again. A new melody yet again. How about increasing the tempo? Oh, that's quite cool. So this really works for live performances. You can save your patterns and then reload them into the machine and play and modify them. That's quite cool. But I would suggest some kind of effects. I've just added the reverb. You could, of course, add whatever you like, delays, flangers. But then it wouldn't be West Coast synthesis, would it? Well, who cares? I mean, it's an enabler. You use it for whatever musical purpose that you see fit. And that's why you buy gear, right? Not to adhere to some philosophy, but to make music that you think are worth making. So now I have given a brief demonstration of how it works. Of course, there are more things, and I will tell you something about the multifunctionality in the next part. And of course, I will tell you how it works with Eurorack. Being Eurorack compatible makes it, to me at least, a no-brainer. You just have to buy it. Increasing the tempo. Oh yes. And some formulas. Not too much of too much modulation. Rarely a good idea. Resonance on the other hand. Even faster. Oh yeah, let's add some lighter notes. Sounds like a guitar is playing. Yes! Lighter still. Oh. It doesn't get any lighter than that. Faster. It's all about the sweet spots. Oh, it's clipping. Interesting. Yes! Before we do anything else, let's take a brief look at the arpeggiator. It is closely connected to the sequencer, very close actually, because the only thing that separates the sequencer and the arpeggiator is the way you add notes. So let's start the sequencer or activate it, yellow modifier and this key, the E. Now it is constantly lit, that means the sequencer is active. By holding white modifier and pushing the same key once more, it starts blinking. Arpeggiator is active. And take notice, hold is also lit at the same time, because at default it activates hold. That is, the arpeggiated sequence is latched. Now let's start with making just a simple sequence. That's nice. Now, if this is, let's put in a higher note as well. If we now choose to activate the arpeggiator, we hold down the white modifier and press this one. Now we are in arpeggiator mode. So this is your arpeggiated sequence. Now, that's it. But if I push a note now, this will happen. Because the way you enter notes on the arpeggiator is different from the sequencer. In order to enter notes on the arpeggiator, you have to hold down keys simultaneously. So if I hold down this one and this one, these two will be the sequence for the arpeggiator. If I deactivate hold, yellow modifier, it will die out. So if I do the same once more, so in order to latch the sequence, or the arpeggiated sequence, you need to activate hold. And now I can you have to hold down all the keys, all the notes. So there are 13 keys. That means you have to have 13 fingers in order to make it possible to hold down every note on the keyboard. So, well, that's the way you do it. And now this is the arpeggiated sequence. So if you would like to say hold down this one and this one and then go one octave up, you press this and say you would like to, yes, and take this. So that's the way you do it. Now let's continue with the Eurorack part. So what we have here is the West Pest together with Eurorack. The Sarge Resonant EQ, a fantastic equalizer, resonating, feedback, etc. And an attenuator by Befaco in order to attenuate the LFO on this one. That's my gripe about this one. It does not come with any attenuation capabilities, at least not for the LFO. Now I would like to demonstrate how easy it is to use this together with Eurorack without removing this from its casing. You can just have a small system on its side. I added a simple reverb using a guitar pedal in this instance, just like previously in this video. And it's about exploring, going west, you know, experimentation, not sing-along synthesizers like Moog, but going out there, right? Space your face. That's what West Coast synthesis is about. And I use my favorite Eurorack module, the Resonant EQ. So let's listen to the sound now. I can remove the tail from the reverb. Okay, so I would like to create a sequence. To me, this shines when it is sequenced. So let's see what we can get. This LFO triangle modulates the fold modulation here. Let's see what we can get. Beware of feedback. The resonant EQ is all about the resonance between the different bands. They are not discrete. So the different frequencies, they are just a reference point. Now I adjusted the swing. Up a couple of octaves. Another note. Adjusting the modulation of the fold modulator. That's why it is nice to have an attenuation capability with offset, so you can move the waveform, the complete waveform, up and down across the zero line. The last thing I would like to show you is the special multifunction tool. You can use one of the patch cables, plug it in there, and what comes out of this depends on the following. You can use the yellow modifier and this A sharp key. You see I cycle through those 4 diodes, 4 bits. This is the first choice, second, third, and fourth. The first one being MIDI CC, where you can have a CC number of your choice, where that this West Pest let you choose, or the mod will control the voltages coming out of this one, from 0 to 5 voltages. The next one, the second one, that's a clock synced LFO. You can adjust the clock sync using the white modifier and this one. Yeah. You have 11 different divisions or multiplications of the current active clock, or the current clock source. You have the third option, which is random voltages from 0 to 5 voltages. And you can use the white modifier and tap this A sharp in order to get certain division or a multiplication of the current active clock source. Last but not least, you have the fourth one, which is the decay envelope, which lets you set the decay envelope from 60 milliseconds to 4000 milliseconds. It's an exponential decay envelope. So you can take this and say, go into, let's say, dynamics modulation. Let's create the sequence first without using the cable. And now I take this one to fold mode, and you will get a different result. Now our current active one is MIDI CC. So let's choose clock synced LFO. Let's choose another division or multiplication. Slightly different result in this case. Let's choose random voltages. Number 3. So this changes the fold modulation by using random voltages. I can use the random voltages to adjust the pitch. That will sound like this. This is West Coast synthesis. Weird sounds, out of scale, out of the Western classical tradition. Or I can use the clock synced LFO. Yes, I think this is in Don Buchla style. Yes. Let me finish this by saying that this comes at a price of $249, $249 or euro. It gives you about 6 or 7 modules, depending how you count. A patch bay, it's Eurorack compatible. So, to me, this is, given its form factor, its price, and what it has to offer, not at least a sequencer, I think it is a no-brainer. I was not given this, I bought it myself, but I would buy it again. This is an interesting tool that will come in handy. And when it comes to the West Coast synthesis part, I think it is more like a synthesizer than a Buchla instrument. I think that. You have the wave folder, you have this special low pass gate, yes, I admit that, and you have randomness, free integral part of West Coast synthesis, but it's more like a synthesizer than a West Coast Buchla synthesizer, I think, in my mind. Buchla systems, for example, a function generator is not present here. And the oscillator is not a complex oscillator, it's an ordinary oscillator. So those 2 points are enough to say that this is more like a normal synthesizer, and the interface is quite normal too. It's not about gestures, which was an integral part of Buchla's philosophy of how to make music. So this is more like a synthesizer, but it's a very good one and at a very low price. So I really would recommend this to anyone who feel that this will complement their current system. Bye.